morning. At the tone, the time will be 1, 2, 3, 4. Exactly.
Woke up this morning without a warning. Words were still ringing in my head. It came, it seemed within my dream. A gentle voice, and this is what it said. Stop now, you got to stop and listen to what I say. Stop and feel that you've been missing.
Welcome to the 100th Funky Radio with Tom and the Monkey Crew. We have with us tonight LRD, Greg, and Stephanie's actually sitting in, and we know when Stephanie sits in, you will hear her. Oh, we are recording this on July 30th, 2015. Oh my God, you know, we get up really early to go to work, and you know, well, I wake up way early anyways, and I was up at about 3 o'clock this morning and walked into my office, and my office faces due west. And the window in my office faces due west. I walked in here, and even before I turned the light on, there was a light shining through my window. And I was like, oh my God, what's going on out there? I looked out the window, and that moon was so huge this morning and yellow. I mean, it's got that yellow harvest moon thing going on, you know?
Yeah.
Giant.
Yeah, I seen it driving into work, and I tried to get a couple pictures on my phone, but, you know, it's a phone picture, but, oh my gosh, it's like, I mean, it was still dark outside, but you really didn't need headlights.
Right.
I mean,
right.
It was so bright, and it was so crisp, too. I mean, yeah, it looked beautiful.
You know, I haven't got my telescope out in almost a year. Can you believe that? And I got this big-ass expensive telescope, and it's just sitting in my back porch gathering dust.
That's
Yeah.
tough, huh?
Yeah, I think tonight, or actually tomorrow night, might be a really good night for me to break it out. It's supposed to be really nice here. Weather's been nice and warm, hot. So we went to a very interesting wedding this last weekend, didn't we?
Goodness.
Wow.
Yeah. So another buddy of ours at work, he got married, and he told us that the wedding was going to be a Viking themed wedding, and then he told us it was a Viking theme for him, but his wife was coming as a steampunk theme, and then he said it's just kind of open to whatever you want to wear, you know, and so you know we just, you know, okay, that's great, and we show up there, and there's people, you know, dressed as fairies, and we dressed our girls as fairies, and
There was even a wood nymph there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all different things, but I mean, it was a great crowd, great energy. But I want to talk about right when the wedding started. The wedding party's in the back, and it was, you know, cloudy, right? You know, it wasn't, you know, blue skies, but it was cloudy off and on. And as soon as they go back there for the wedding to start, it starts to sprinkle a little bit. And I was telling Greg this earlier too. In my peripherals, there was a field next to us, and I was seeing this like dark funnel cloud almost swirl out of the clouds and come down, and I could only see it in my peripherals. And you know, I'd look at it, and it wasn't there, and I'd look back up forward, and I would definitely see it. And it was there, you know, most of the wedding ceremony. But man, when the ceremony started, the rain started to fall, and we're sitting outside on hay bales.
Yeah.
You know, and you got you know, people dressed up as, you know, Vikings, and they're all, you know, they're into the you know, earth, you know, I don't know what they're really into, what you call it, but they have their own covens.
Druidic,
Mixture of, you know, different cultures. And, they're going through this ceremony, and the rain's falling, and like my whole body is like chicken skin, you know, my goosebumps are so hard all over. And we're just sitting in the rain, and when the bride comes up, you know, everybody's walking down the aisle, but as soon as the bride gets up there and she gets ready to walk, I mean, the rain just starts dumping. I mean, and everybody's out there and everybody's, staying in place. Nobody's getting up, running for cover, grabbing umbrellas and just, that kind of stuff. And she walks down the aisle, and I mean, it was just, I'm getting goosebumps right now just thinking about it.
The ceremony went on. It was about 15 minutes long through the whole ceremony. They shared mead. Then there was the exchange of swords, right? And then they went through the whole ceremony, and as soon as it was it was done, that I now pronounce you Lord DeLong and Lady.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I forgot your last name. Anyways, as soon as that was done, and it was all said and done, the rain stopped.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was like it was like perfectly synchronized. Yeah. The weather was perfectly synchronized with the ceremony.
And the bride couldn't be more thrilled because they're all farmers too, and they all wanted the water, and they've been asking for the water, and they got it right when they got married, and they couldn't have been happier.
Yeah, well, I was thinking, what kind of Viking wedding would it be without rain?
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to rain, and I mean, the rain just washes all the bullshit away.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody was there. I mean, we were all cleansed by it, for the ceremony and for the joining of the two families, or the two clans as they called it.
And by the reception, everybody was dried off, and
it got hot.
It got
The
warm.
sun came out.
Yeah, it was awesome. I can't count how many times I've seen weather perform for events in our life. Not necessarily I've seen it perform in my life. I don't know how many times, but just like this wedding and watching that. I mean, I can distinctly recall a funeral I went to where there were just during the funeral ceremony there were these big, magnificent, complete circle rainbows around the sun. And then as soon as the funeral was over, they were gone. It was, I mean, things like that that I've seen happen in our environment, exhibiting the environment exhibiting or the magic being tangible enough for anybody and everybody with the eyes to see to be able to see. So I just, you see the wonder and the magic that is all around us all the time. And, I don't know, more confirmations of, this place is really cool.
Awesome.
All right. So, let's, go ahead and get on with the show. We've got a returning guest with us tonight, and we haven't had him on the show for a couple of years, but man, he's got a very special place in my heart. We click really well. And you guys, if you've been listening to the 100th Monkey Radio for a while, you may recall Perry Mills. He is quite a musician. We use his music, at least every other week for bumper music on the show, the Perry Mills Project. And just an absolutely amazing being. He's been blessed and cursed with an unending curiosity into the mysteries of life and death since a very young age. His passion for learning has drawn him into both Eastern and Western wisdom traditions, as well as the practices of South American shamanism. He has worked as an astrologer, tarot reader, and cabalist. His experience in the areas of entheogenic journeying, divining modalities, energy reading, and automatic writing had given him a bird's eye view of a multidimensional universe, little known by the casual New Age seeker. He has written many articles and co-authored the book Surfing the Transformational Waves of 2012 with Kelly La Sha. As the owner of an aerospace machining company, he is also a fabricator of precise metal architectures used in aircraft and spacecraft. Concurrently with all of his other pursuits, he has been an avid guitarist and songwriter, performing professionally and recording 5 studio albums. After 40 years of esoteric study, his passion is now geared toward the synthesis of the mysteries of both dual and non-dual spiritual paths, simultaneous time, and practical magic. Currently is focusing on our personal use of pure presence as an intentional tool and the magical key to unlocking the life we desire. He is a strong advocate for the restoration of the divine masculine and the divine feminine archetypes and the direct connection to the infinite power of love. I'd like to welcome you back to the 100th Monkey Radio, Perry Mills.
Yeah.
Hello, hello.
Yay, thanks. Thank you all. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, it's great to be back with friends. I'm glad to be here. I'm very chomping at the bit to talk about this. That bio is so all over the place that I want people to know that I'm also a very down to earth person.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I hope that comes through the show, too. Oh, so Perry, for those listeners out there who have not heard about Perry, who and what Perry Mills is, would you give us that nutshell version of what got you here?
Well, like it says in the beginning of the bio, it's kind of a blessing and a curse to have this infinite curiosity for life and for getting some kind of answers to the enigmas and the paradoxes. I spent a lot of time doing that search, like many people that are listening. Like you just mentioned, I wasn't satisfied until I pretty much touchstoned on just about every kind of wisdom tradition and indigenous culture. What's Perry Mills about is really that I'm kind of urged to fill in the spaces. There's a lot of rhetoric out there in the New Age, and I've been a part of the New Age for a long time. I was there in the beginning when the hippies decided to turn on and ended up in India, and a lot of people started looking deeper into actualizing spirituality in their lives outside of their traditional upbringing, religious upbringings, and I was one of those people. So when I got back from India and I started having to be a real human being as well as just an idealist, I found that I was voraciously looking for a deeper answer than I was getting from all the sources I was looking at. So I did a long time in astrological and other divining modalities. I love the Kabbalah, and I loved also the symbol languages of everything from tarot to palm reading even. Very strongly attracted to the powers and the mysteries of the unconscious mind. So I spent a lot of time looking at the effects of the unconscious programming that was being kind of described through a lot of therapeutic disciplines out there that were helping people with true emotional problems, old programming that was really messing with their lives. Well, I just kind of touchstone on a lot of these things, and I'm not a dabbler. Usually I'm spending years on one thing and moving on to another and years on that. So what Perry has found is that since I've been doing interviews for the last several years on internet radio, I'm looking at this behemoth called the New Age, and I'm looking at the sins of the New Age, and they look so very reminiscent of the sins of all Orthodox religions and ascent paths that I also looked at years previous. And I realized that there's really not a really good model out there to help souls who are infinite affairs, who are not necessarily here to pay retribution for karma, but are here to actually express divine creativity as a proxy for the source of all of us. And this is a concept that's very little understood or talked about, because most of what I'm seeing in the New Age is a fight against evil. Now, the fight against evil is not a new thing. The fight against evil is actually a trap, and I'm going to explain to you tonight just why I say that.
Oh, wow. Well, there we go. Let's go right there. I mean, the fight against evil, that's the big one that all of this, I mean, you look at it, our media and our, the movies that are put out there. It's always that good against bad, So,
well, I think it's in the terminology fight too. Fight against evil.
Right.
I mean, there's something to be said with, what's that saying? You can't solve a problem with the same
level of consciousness that
created it. Yeah.
Right.
So fighting is still fighting, right? I mean, where do we bridge that at? Where do we get away from the you know, as I see a lot of people seeing it as, you know, there has to be a fight. There has to be some sort of, you know, you got to go in the building and drag people out and, you know, do whatever to them. But isn't that the same consciousness that created it? You know, so where is that bridge at?
Well, and that's kind of why I'm doing this work, is to describe precisely what that bridge is, what that bridge work needs to be, and it's a bridge building really that has to happen within the individual self. There's a lot of talk about about sovereignty. Let's just talk about that for a minute, because it really kind of sets the stage for who's right. When you're talking about fighting evil, you know, I don't know where to start with this, Tom. In order to really get a good grasp on duality, and all duality is always a dance of opposites, and of course, usually that dance isn't a dance at all. It's a downright battle. And in a battle, in the sphere, I call it the sphere. The sphere has all things in it. It has positive and negative. And in fact, the sphere is defined by its center only. I mean, the center is this feature of the sphere that is most important. And what you have splaying out in this orb of rays that come out of that center are all the different opposites. Because, you know, when you're getting into the realm that I'm going to be talking about, you're actually getting into a magical realm where time and space is of secondary consideration. It is a reality, and we do use it, and it does have a purpose. But you're talking about infinite souls, and I don't pull any punches here. I am not a secularist. I could talk a lot about the secular society and the way it's been used to take the sacred out of us, and we should get to that subject as well. But what I'm saying when we're talking about duality and about the fight that everyone wants to engage in, you know, everyone's needing purpose, and it's what I'm going to describe for you folks tonight is that every part that you can't integrate of the sphere, every part of all things, because there's not a thing out in that you can observe in reality that doesn't deserve to be there. It's all perfectly held up by its opposites, and there's this partnership going on in all dualities, where the one holds one end of the pole and the other holds the other end of the pole, and they all represent different ends of virtue. I can describe, and I will describe for you what I consider the sins of both ends of those poles, because they're definitely there's as many sins on the right-hand path as there is on the left-hand path. Right. And I only call them sins because of their refusal to acknowledge their own place and how they actually contracted to be there. Anyway, so as far as the fight goes, it's my intention with all this to start bringing the sacred back into people's awareness, and also to bring love as being the most important component of your life, not who's right, not who's right, not who's wrong. You don't win anything by winning a battle.
Yes.
You win by loving. That's about it. If you can see the innocence in your enemy, you're halfway there.
Okay, so your aim is to bring the sacred back into this. So give me that definition, your definition of the sacred. What is the sacred?
Well, one can't look at life. You know, you were mentioning a little bit earlier about the wedding experience and the clouds and the way that nature somehow answers to the moment and says that I'm with you and that we're all connected and that this is not a coincidence. That this is really very much a part of the way we're all connected, and that there's a reflection of that connection of that moment, that the power of that moment was mirrored and expressed by the weather around you folks. That to me is magic. That to me is the way everything already works. People like to think that it's an occasional occurrence of recognition, but what if I was to tell you that is never not the case? Then it's really about how you're witnessing your life and whether you're seeing the magic that's inside and outside of you all the time. So most of what I'm talking about bringing the sacred back into life and putting love back into the equation is that what really, what's suffering, you know, let's face it, all of us know enough about suffering to write our own books about it. But suffering really is this kind of disconnect, or this confused and sad awareness of these opposites fighting and bickering inside of our lives. expressing in our relationships and in society around us, and even in our own self-worth and our own self-doubt. All those things can be remedied by another layer of consciousness that can see it for the perfection that it is, as a perfect reflection of the seeds that you actually planted with your own beliefs. And of course, that gets us into the whole matter of who's in control of your life. Are you, or are you imprinted so heavily by your upbringing and by your influences, by the culture, by religion, by the television, the internet, the new age? How much are you really running your own show, and how much are you just parroting what you've been hearing? The loudest voices being your more predominant parts, and the weak voices kind of being the less loud. The sacred in love is really, if a person doesn't reach a sense of the sacred, I think that you fall into this suffering trap of the secular person who thinks that we're just kind of an evolutionary accident that is somehow bumping and grinding against all the other evolutionary accidents, and fighting for position like tooth and claw, hierarchical stuff. Who's got more power? Who's got more looks? Who's got more nepotism or entitlement? I mean, this is not sacred.
Right.
Sacred is laced in there, but this is not the orientation that an empowered soul, a sovereign empowered soul, that part of us is not served by that kind of a mirror. So what I want to talk about tonight has more to do with the real self, as opposed to all of these mirrored reflections from culture that take us away from ourselves.
Yeah. Well, I've been on this path for a little while, and I'm at a point now where the voices in my head are a little more manageable, so to speak, right? So the old cartoons where there's an angel on one shoulder and a demon on the other shoulder, they're both talking back and forth, and you're just it's almost like the person in the middle, you in the middle, is just the observer, and you're just waiting to see which one is going to spit the better game for you to follow it. And so how we were saying earlier, where the with where the fight is, I'm seeing the fight isn't externalized from ourselves. The fight is within all of us, and taming. I don't know if taming is the right word, but taming those voices that are in us. That one says one thing and the other says the other thing. But I'm starting to see it now is that one is an angel and one is a demon, but both of them are me, but they're not me. I mean, what do I say about it?
Yes.
How do we get to that centered point to where we can not even have those thoughts in our minds anymore? I guess I'm saying, I mean, where do we get that response to it at? To where, there is no more triggers. There is no more anything else to even go down that thought pattern.
To the point where you're responding instead of reacting.
Yes. Yes.
This always gets into, our multidimensional self. I have an adage. I don't know if someone else ever came up with this one, but I always say the cure for the paradox is the sphere. And what I mean by that is that when you have paradoxes, you have two possible answers, either of which is impossible with the other. And I say that the sphere basically envelops both of those. So when you're talking about the two-toothed demon and the angel on the shoulders, what you're looking at is that you become this battlefield because you're basically head to head with all of these things. You're on their level. What I'm suggesting for people, the sacred part of us, the soul sovereign part, the God proxy part, is that you have to basically bump your consciousness out a little wider so that you can see how those two extremes actually serve a one agenda, like a oneness. Souls are larger than this battle, but they've been basically lied to try to keep them from awakening to the fact that they are actually the creative proxies of the creative principle in all worlds. So I know that sounds like a funny thing to say and maybe a little unclear. I really need to kind of lay out a little bit of an orientation shift. The problem we have, and that you've just described, Jake, is that, if that was Jake, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, was the same problem that most people in this place, whether it's New Age, whether it's traditional ascent people, and when I say ascent, I mean like most religious paths are ascent. They think that this world is a testing ground, that it's not okay, and that you're really just proving yourself, becoming worthy, so that you can go to a better world that is actually somewhere else. That's what we call ascent, A-S-C-E-N-T. Well, that paradigm flies in the face of another paradigm, which is the inside-out paradigm. The inside-out paradigm, and this is not one that many people ever talk about. Let me just, as a starting point, I'm going to tell you the difference between outside in and inside out. These are the two opposing paradigms in the New Age and in the world at large. In an outside-in perspective, you are a small particle, a piece, an incomplete, flawed, unconscious slave, small. You're in a large, immensely large environment that has all the power and all the mystery behind it. And you feel small in that world, and all of a sudden you are inside of an environment that isn't you. You are separated, and you are just adrift on this vast sea of unpredictability. And you're not empowered at all. So you don't have a lot of say about the way things go. That's outside in. Most people get up in the morning, they go, oh shit, I got all these obligations. There's so many problems in the world, in my relationships, my people have this problem, that problem, and everything looks like it's going to hell. That is a completely disempowering way to see their lives. And I'm going to show you and tell you that that's exactly not who you are. So if you're looking at a larger perspective or an inner perspective, inside out suggests that you are actually a piece of divinity. You actually come into incarnation from that allness awareness into a more encapsulated awareness, and you're trying to incarnate that allness awareness into a smaller perspective. The inside out says that soul decides what its experience is going to be. The inside meaning the soul self, the God proxy, the spark of divinity, the piece of God, if you will. If in an inside-out world, you have to lose a lot of the outside-in programming. If you get into inside-out and you realize, oh my God, I am in control of my life? Well, not as long as I believe I'm not. Not as long as I'm buying into this, that, and the other belief system that tells me that I'm shit and that I'll never make it until I die. So there's a big shift that has to happen here to realize, oh, if I am actually a piece of the actual creative principle of life, just like every other soul, every incarnate soul, every atom, every galaxy, every gestalt, we call them gestalts in this life, every group or every layer could be a cell, could be an atom, it could be a tribe, it could be a planet, it could be a solar system or a galaxy. It could go down into the subatomic areas that really mirror and mimic what you'll see on the outside macroscopically. You'll find those galaxies, and every atom becomes a solar system, and on inward, until you realize that the scale is not as important, that small and large are not as important as what's happening on whatever layer that you're dealing with. So virtues become more important than conquests. Love becomes the most important virtue of all, because wherever you are, you should be learning how to be there in a way that's satisfying and fulfilling for you. Now, most people are looking at this world and they're going, I'm never going to be happy as long as this world is as screwed up as it is, and as long as there's these kinds of atrocities being performed against people, I'll never be happy. And that very condition and belief by itself is part of the problem. Is the fact that as souls, each one of us is charged with the individual, I guess you'd say, injunction to be as close to like the likeness of God as possible. In other words, you create culture. You do your part, but you don't become a slave to a cause. You make sure you hold your sovereignty true, and you only give to the degree that the sovereignty still stays intact. If you ever jump on a bandwagon and you lose sovereignty out of it more than you wanted to, then you're not being served by that. And that would go for just about every New Age movement and every world religion. And so I'm going to talk more about what it means to be the sovereign soul and the awakening of the magical self. And that journey to that awakening is largely it's about changing your orientation of how you witness life and how you actually step into your own empowerment. And that isn't power over others. Empowerment just means that you're not being a puppet for every other cultural propaganda or religious propaganda. I know that was a long sentence.
Right.
It's a very huge topic, but I'll tell you what, I don't know that there's really a way out of suffering until people really step into their divinity. They have to find out what's sacred about themselves. They have to realize that this whole experience of life is a very sacred, very magical experience, and that it's not haphazard and it's not chaotic. What looks like chaos is usually a lack of understanding on our parts. But I'm just going to say this perfection is you are perfect. Every one of listeners, myself included, all of us are listening, and we're all going, you know what? I don't believe him when he says I'm perfect. And it's my job out here to kind of get people to tamp down all of the bad false programming and imprinting that's in their belief systems, so that they can step into their own captain's chair and start actually creating the life that they want and the experience that they want. I'm not saying that you're going to get the big house in the Hamptons. I'm not saying that you will not want the big house in the Hamptons when you get to the layer that I'm talking about, because love doesn't want extra. It doesn't want anything that ends up burdening it. What it wants is, once they give, it's all about the generosity. Well, generosity can't be faked. You have to first get the flow, that creative flow. You have to be connected to this source power that's beating inside of behind every heart of us. That source power is right there. And what stands between you and that source power is these membranes, these propaganda layers and imprints that have basically been put in place in duality to keep souls from awakening to their magical selves. And the reason, so as soon as this kind of becomes plausible in your own belief, then you can start winnowing out all the false identities and all the false beliefs. You can stop thinking that you have to escape this life to get to what you want. And you can start actually embodying the sacred right here and now instead of waiting for some other time.
Yeah, and that's why I asked you the question about the angel and demon, because it seems like, I mean, if you hear a lot of people talking, a really good game, but the thing is that, when it comes down to it, I see a lot of self-sabotage going on. And I'm a prime example. I mean, I sabotage myself constantly. I mean, I know all this shit and I'm still smoking cigarettes. I mean, come on, self-sabotage. But, so that's why, I asked that question, but yeah, let's get into, how do we get there? I mean, what is your method? I mean, what are the steps you're taking to get there? To go in and declare that self-sovereignty.
Oh yeah, there's a number of fronts that I approach this. The one that everyone has to take on head on is the denial of the perfection. Most people have been programmed into think that this good and evil schism or schism, however you want to say it, that will never be broached or breached or whatever healed. What I'm saying is that staying out of contradiction, staying out of self-contradiction is probably paramount in being able to be empowered. So you're talking about self-sabotage. That's totally self-contradiction. So you got one part of yourself that believes that, you should be free to do whatever you want. And then you got another one that says, well, yeah, but if you do whatever you want, you're going to kill yourself with these cigarettes, because they tell us that if you smoke cigarettes, you're going to die of cancer. So I can't even control that. Knowing that reality, I can't control it. I must be flawed. And there must be something wrong with me. And what I'm going to tell you is that you can smoke cigarettes until you're 100 and not die of cancer. If you don't believe that you're going to die of cancer from smoking.
Yes.
This is something that, I struck on this here, a year or so ago, and it just rang so true to me, and I keep repeating it. So many people out there, they'll go into they'll go into prayer or meditation, or, they'll, click their heels together 3 times or whatever the heck it is to do something to activate that divine magic, that manifestation process, or even on the other side of it, throw the curse at the bad guy or whatever it happens to be. They'll go through some ritual or whatever to create something in this world, and then when they're done with that, they're like, okay, it's all done, nothing else, I'm not doing anything else. But what we miss, what all of us miss at some point in our life, at least, and most of us at most of the points in our life, is that we're not just creators while we're actively and consciously trying to create. We are creators 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And that really, when you were talking about the inside out and the outside in thing, that inside out thing screams, I'm 100% creator. I'm always creating.
Yeah.
Whether I know it or not, despite what my perceptions are, or the feedback that I'm getting in my environment of what it's telling me, I am still creating 100% of the time.
Yeah. And of course, we know that, case in point, that when you're running unconsciously through your life, and we have to touch on presence soon here. When you're running unconsciously through your dailies, you just got out of your meditation or your prayer time or your intentional work, and that's all. It's awesome work. I do it all the time. But if you step out of it, and now you're running your regular daily mundane life, and there's a lot of habits that we fall into, and we realize we're actually parroting and mimicking a lot of imprints that come from our cultural. So yeah, we are creating, but if we're unconscious, we're going to create what we've been basically hypnotized to think and to believe. And we become part of this whole mass of humanity that believes things in a very homogenous way. I mean, the way that we all cling to the news, or we cling to the internet news, or we cling to alternative news, or our own little cult news, or whatever it is. What we're doing is we're being used as proxies, as kind of soldiers for an ideology or of some kind, or a religious pursuit. And unless we're really totally in the moment, in presence, knowing that this is exactly who we are, basically, I'm not going to say that we're lazy, but in a way we kind of vault on the side of convenience a lot of times and just think other people's thoughts. I mean, it's easier for me to, like in the case of people who like to join groups. I was a group joiner. I was in a lot of groups. I got a lot of support from being in groups. But what I also did is I also learned in time that those groups also had their demands and their dogmas, and they did tamp down the sovereign soul and the sacred capacity of each soul to actually step away from the group and become their own self-supporting religious or spiritual person. So getting back to this whole idea of the disciplines that we all employ to try to better ourselves and to make a better world around us, and yet we walk through our lives and pretty much unconsciously fall into bad habits. And those habits only become apparent to us if someone steps out and yells at you and say, hey, have you given that some more thought? Have you looked at how much power you're borrowing from being a group affiliate? You realize that you're giving them the power to decide what reality is for you. And you're going along with it because you really didn't take the time to imagine your own, or to find your own connection with Source, and you got someone in the middle that had it all neatly packaged, and all you had to do is pay dues and follow the rules. So these are things that we do. We trade sovereignty for convenience, and it's no sin as long as we keep moving through it and get closer to our sovereign power. And that sacred moment when you do, is one where you where you stay more awake to your creator status, and you walk through your life without planting a bunch of irresponsible thoughts, not helpful fears, letting them run away with you, and creating demons and stories and attitudes and judgments about bad guys and good guys. All that stuff ends up being baggage to the sovereign soul, who gets buried underneath this. And now the soul is carrying this huge basket of obligations and allegiances and attitudes and judgments. They lost themselves. They're unconscious, and the programs are running. So it's my job to kind of just get us all to look at this and to start divesting ourselves of these lies, and also to start making our own direct connect with our own source, because we have a direct line. It's like, the red telephone in the president's office. We have a direct line to source, and we don't believe we have it. And some people sort of believe it, and some almost believe it, and a lot of people believe it's never. There is no God. There is no source. It's all just a divine, intelligent accident that brought us all to be. Well, these are the states that we're all unconsciously, swimming around in. It's my job to kind of mirror for you guys a state of yourself that is much more empowered, but also much more compassionate. It's going to focus on the virtues that actually add up to value fulfillment. We want to be happy. We want to be in love with life. That's why we're here. That's the ultimate. It's not having a boat or a Chris Craft or a big house. It's not about having a pretty wife or a handsome husband. It's not about having a big family where they have big family get-togethers. Well, all that really matters is whether you're in love with your life. And if you're in conflict, and if it's showing up in your relationships and in the world that you see, then you're basically missing out on what could be. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to kind of say, hey, there's another way that this story can go for yourself.
Isn't this all of doing all of this type of work? I mean, we're out there trying to enlighten people, to bring them to a place where they're able to find truth within themselves, find the magic within themselves, be able to take more control over their own lives. These are all good and very commendable and beautiful things that so many of us out here trying to do in the world today. But isn't that just the other edge of the same blade that we see out there, even within the major media and the dogmas and all the other things that doing this work, we're working on trying to build an energy around this material ourselves and increase that energy, just like what we're perceiving as the dark side or the bad side or whatever you want to call it, the ones that are misleading and distracting us, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just thinking that doing this work is just basically the other side of the coin from all that other stuff.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because this is part of what my gripe is with righteous paths too. And the way I talk about this, the reason why I've been calling this spherical reality is because if you imagine a divine origin, some unknown mysterious origin before there was any manifestation or creations, and you're thinking about from that center point of origin, that there's really no beginning or ending. It's an infinite affair, and it decides that it's going to create an environment that's got to be self-sustaining. It's got to be self-regulating, and it has to explode out from a center point, because in no time and no space, it's kind of like an infinite center of something. It's not somewhere, because in order for it to be somewhere, someone would have to be identifying it as a witness from somewhere else, and that hasn't even happened yet. Right. All right. So this thing explodes out, but you see, in order for something to be self-regulated, meaning a sphere, Like all the universe is a sphere. The world's a sphere, the atom's a sphere. I mean, there's so many spheres, it's everywhere. In order for that thing to be self-sustaining, it has to be counterbalanced from that center point, that center of gravity that sits in the middle of the sphere. And you can say that easily that center goes infinitely deep into forever. But just for the purposes of this metaphor, if you're going to create space from no space, you have to create counterbalancing extremes in order to define the space, because there's no definition in this center, right? It's creating definition, and so it creates time and space. In time and space, it's a sphere. Now, duality is really a sphere. Many people think of it as an either or, like a seesaw. But when I see it a sphere. And I see it where the virtues of all light and dark, the virtues of all the shades of gray in between are enough to, they're an infinite array. Oh, I just hit the mic, sorry. An infinite array of combinations of dark and light, of other versus source, of dual versus non-dual, of material versus spiritual. All of those dualities are all kind of like the poles at the opposite ends of a sphere, like a seesaw, or, you know, whatever that line is between the extremes. Now let's talk about the dark and the light for a minute. The thing about the dark and fighting the dark that's so futile is that there's virtues in the dark that have been denied by the light, and there's virtues of the light that have been denied by the dark. Those virtues are still real virtues. I can tell you lots of virtues in the dark, and I'll show you lots of virtues in the light, and I can also show you the sins in both the dark and in the light. If you're talking about the opposites, like you're talking masculine, feminine, you're talking about spiritual versus mundane or material. You're talking about righteous versus evil. What you're really talking about are two different extremes of one kind of a virtue. Now let's talk briefly about free will. Now, you and I all love the idea of free will, just like we love the idea of sovereignty. We think that with free will, I don't have anyone telling me what to do, and I get to create it any way I want. And for the first time in my life, I'm not like performing for some outside agency and some rules and dogmas and all the guilt and all the shame that comes along with it. If you were to take free will to its extreme, it wouldn't really take any consideration in its furthest, darkest point. That free will would be taken to a place where it does not take any consideration of any other person or any other situation into consideration. So in the extreme of free will, I call free will run amok. And in free will run amok, you cut yourself off from the foundation of the sphere, or from the whole, the foundation of all of it. You cut yourself off so much from source, from any obligation or sense of community with any of the other creations, that now you are isolated, and so you have to take energy in order to survive. So it's really a dynamic of energy, that the dark take energy from others. And then they don't have inspiration, all they have is control. And so this is what they settle for. Now, that's just kind of a physics. It's a psychic, spiritual physics that they do this. Now let's just swing over to the right-hand side now. Let's go all the way over to the uber righteous side. The super spiritual, the non-dual crowd, the oneness crowd. Now in the oneness crowd, which are really quick to judge the darkness crowd, by the way, which is an interesting thing. What's going on over there in righteous land, in oneness land, is it's kind of like the difference between libertarianism and socialism. On the righteousness/socialism side, the righteous decide, okay, we're all one, and that means that nobody can really do anything that messes with the others, and we're all going to agree on what that one way to be is. And it's starting to sound like a new world order. So you see, way on the righteous end, you've got a lot of judgment about the dark, and on the dark side, they're pissed off because of the way free will has been taken from the righteous, from the individual. You got a strong individuality on the dark side. You got strong community allegiance on the light side, and both of them steal sovereignty, and they steal the peace and the sacred out of the souls that carry that banner. When I talk about the sphere, when I talk about the true healing, what we need to do is we have to recognize our dark. I mean, there's a lot of talk in psychological treatises about doing your shadow work, psychologically, unconscious work. You know, a lot of times the adage has been thrown out there that what you can't integrate, you project. So if you have, you know, a secret fantasy that's dark, and you can't live with yourself to believe that that you could have those fantasies, what you'll do is you'll find that fantasy exacted or expressed by someone else, and you'll hate them. So that's in you, and that person is just mirroring that part of you that you cannot forgive. So this shadow work is really important when you're trying to include all of you into the equation. If you're not going to be all of it on some level, you're going to have to find the innocence in the dark, and you're going to have to find the innocence in the gray, and the innocence in the light. And you're going to see that you are all of those things. And the world is kind of reflecting this inner reality of you. And the things that you hate the most are the things you should be looking at the most as being a part of you projected out.
Yeah. So with, you know, so you got the dark on one side and light on another side. And, you know, one is up, one is down, you know, whatever, however it's balanced, or it's unbalanced out. So if you were to, you know, if it's like a teeter-totter, you know, and you balance it in the middle, does that cancel itself out then? If you're able to integrate, or if you're able to balance the light and the dark?
Yeah, that's a great question. The way I look at it, you know, we talk about the pendulum all the time in this work. The thing is, there's no such thing as what I want to call it, a stillness. There's no such thing as stillness. If something is alive, it's never still. It's always kind of swinging and dancing between its opposites. It's always doing this because it doesn't know what it is unless it knows the edges of its own extremes. And this is something that is played out in physics and human hearts and relationships and personalities. We're always moving. We're always kind of never settling in a real center. What we're doing is we're always kind of spiraling and bouncing off of extremes, and we kind of mix it up because we're really pumping new emergent experience. One of the strongest parts of this God code that I refer to in my writings, the thing is, if something is truly living, it has to be emerging. So you can't aim for a state of being happy all the time. Everyone's loving. Everyone, there's daisies and there's beautiful things and the food's great and, everyone's happy. This is really just some kind of a strange fantasy that doesn't really resemble livingness at all. Because you and I both know, all of us know, that if you're rich, like you won the lottery, once you had everything you ever dreamed you wanted, you'd get bored fast. You'd be looking for some kind of stimulation that actually fed your soul. Having stuff doesn't help. Having safety is good, but it isn't everything. And the thing, you have to take risks to emerge. So when I talk about livingness, I talk about this God code. Now, every one of us has been somewhat exposed to the holographic universe idea as a paradigm, and some of us have been exposed to fractal mathematics and the way it looks when you put it on a computer screen. Fractals are a beautiful way to see the coherence and the similarity in all life forms, and how there seems to be an inner code that describes through all the myriad creations that similarity they call the fractal code. So in a livingness situation where you have a God code, if there is a God, if you believe that there's a God, you know that all of this is happening from a layer that's not where you live. But if it's not alive, it's not swimming upstream, if it's not gaining new experience. I mean, the thing that kills people and relationships of all kinds is boredom or impasse, where the state of affairs stalls and gets stale, and all of a sudden it runs out of energy because no new energy is coming in. And that's what emergence is about. So emergence is like creativity. It's like taking risks. It's about pushing the envelope a little bit with yourself. It's also about swinging the pendulum from your dual and non-dual natures. So I'm saying this is it's a very deep and broad subject, and we kind of jumped into it in the middle of the pool without any water wings.
Right.
When I describe this in my book, and when I do it in a more organized way, I actually start people from just changing their witnessing to change their perspective. If you can change your perspective from outside in to inside out, there's a way that somehow starts to make this make better sense for you.
Yeah. So we're actually at the top of the hour already, and I just looked over at the clock and went, holy crap. This has gone by way too fast, Perry.
Yeah.
So you are working on a book now. Is this is Spherical Reality in the title there somewhere?
Yes, the book is called Spherical Reality and the Awakening Magical Self.
Nice. And where are you at with it? When do you expect to have it complete?
Well, you know what? It should be done within the next, I'd say, 6 to 8 months. I've got this. Most of it is already written in my many articles, and I'm just compiling now and realizing, oh my God, I have to make a linear storyline with this, and it should be between 6 and 8 months. And I'm not so sure how I'm going to present it. I may just keep it on the internet as an ebook, because I want to make sure that people can that this thing can manifest in a way that people can access. I know that we all are all very facile on our computers now, and I know that a few of us are looking at reading long treatises on anything. So I'm going to try to keep this thing succinct. I may have to separate it into a number of volumes, but the whole idea of it is to bring the inspiration back into people, bring the sacred back, and to get people to see that the sacred is right here and right now, that it's the treasures of everything they ever dreamed of are right here, and they don't have to go somewhere else, and they don't have to fix the world, and they don't have to die to get to it. That's where the magical self comes into play. And so I describe in these articles and in this book how we change our perspective, we stop becoming our own self-sabotaging creator, and we start actually with presence, magically alter our life in very incremental ways, almost imperceivably, and watch our life turn into one that's more satisfying and fulfilling. And if love isn't part of it, then what is your reason? You know, I think love is the most important reason. It's really the reason why everything exists. It's love. And of course it expresses in a lot of ways. So I'm going to emphasize that too, because you know what? A person who's in love with life can be anywhere and be in love with life. They can be rich or poor. They can be single. They can be in a relationship. They can be infirmed. They can be healthy. There can be so many things. You just add love to anything and it all gets better.
Right. Exactly. All right. So, and where can people reach you at, Perry?
I'm asking people to email me, and I will send them articles direct as attachments. Until I get the book done, I'll send them snippets. So what I'm asking them is to email me at perrymills@att.net. And briefly, if they have a question or if they are interested in an article or two, and I'll just shoot it out to them on the email and they can take a look.
All right. Well, we will definitely put that in the info tab on this show, wherever we happen to post it at. And so if you're out there listening and want to contact Perry, then right down below where you're listening to this at, underneath the description, you'll see a little link there. It'll take you right there. All right. Well, we're gonna take a short break and come back and dig into this some more. I'm kind of intrigued on. I'm intrigued on all of this stuff,
Yeah.
but finding this balance for ourselves, finding this
Peace, love, and prosperity.
Exactly.
Right? That's what I want to get into.
And getting that inside out perspective, and how do we do that? How do we, what are some of the things that we can do to reinforce that growth process that we must go through to reach that point? So,
I'd be glad to delve into that.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for listening to this first hour. If you're out there listening on one of those other media formats, the YouTubes, the iTunes, the Vimos, the wherever this happened to land, I would urge you to go over to www.the100thmonkeyradio.com and check out the almost 6 years of shows we have there now. So it's good stuff. Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance.
Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change.
How do you wash your sweet potato?
Namaste.
You've been missing along the way. Put aside your petty fight, serve your dignity. You've got to show the heart that you've been hiding and set it free. There's just one door, we're gone wrong. We all need love, and if the cure for one is the cure for us all, there's an urgent message trying to reach you. Excuse yourself and pick up the call. You gotta pick up the call. It came the same way the very next day. The words they just kept on coming through. Hard to conceive if you believe me. This is what you really want to do. You got to tune into your inner being. Now let it be. You got to activate your inner vision. Now let it see. Cast out the doubt, the mindless chatter. Now let it go. It's time to tap into the heart of the matter. 'Cause don't you know there's just one door in a world gone wrong. We all need loving. And if the cure for one is the cure for all, step right up and don't be shy. Excuse yourself and pick up the call. Pick up the call. You gotta pick up the call. Pick up the call. Complicated, it's really all quite simple in the end. You got to tune into your inner being. Now let it be. You got to activate your inner vision. Now let it see. Cast out the doubt, the mindless chatter. Now let it go. It's time to tap into the heart of the matter. 'Cause don't you know there's just one door in the world gone wrong. Up and don't be shy. Got to look yourself right in the eye. There's a magic moment trying to meet you, an urgent message trying to reach you. The phone is ringing off the wall, so pick up the call. You gotta pick up the call.